Welcome back to Eternal Bible Stories, where we share real, near-death experiences, stories that have the power to change your life. But before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what really happens to the souls of those who have been cremated? Does the way we leave this world affect where we will go after we die? Today I bring you the testimony of a woman who died, but came back with vivid memories of hell and an unexpected encounter with Jesus himself. There, he revealed a shocking truth about the fate of cremated souls, something that may completely shake your understanding of life after death. If you believe that life doesn't end in ashes, stay with us until the end of this video. And please, let us know where you're watching from and which part of this story touched your heart the most. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because today's story might save a soul, perhaps even yours. Now, here is her testimony. Hello, my name is Madeline Reeves. I'm 54 years old and I live in Boise, Idaho. I never imagined that one day I would be sharing this story in front of thousands of people. For nearly 2 years, I kept everything that happened on that fateful night to myself. Not because I was afraid of being judged, but because I needed time to process everything I had gone through. Before all of this, my life was fairly ordinary by most people's standards. I had a stable job, a modest little home, and the usual ups and downs of everyday life. I'm the mother of Nathan, my son, who has been in a wheelchair since he was 6 years old after a tragic swimming accident at Redfish Lake. I used to believe that love could overcome anything until I discovered that my husband, Derek, had betrayed not only our marriage, but also the closest friendship I had. The woman, she was my best friend, the one I trusted, the one I shared my joys and sorrows with. Worse yet, she was pregnant. The news spread quickly, and the pain I could barely bear suddenly became a public spectacle. I saw the pitying looks, heard the whispers as I passed by. My private grief, my suffering, it was all laid bare for the world to see and judge. Around the same time, my left arm started to ache constantly. It was a strange kind of pain, a mix of numbness and weakness. At times it felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on that one arm, but with everything going on, I barely had time to think about it. Besides, who would notice me anyway? People were too busy gossiping about the affair. In the middle of all this chaos, only my son remained my reason to keep going. He didn't know anything, and I wanted to keep it that way. Accepting that he'd be in a wheelchair for life was already a wound too deep for a child to carry. I couldn't let his tender little heart take on the pain of adult betrayal too. Then, after finding out that the baby my former best friend was carrying wasn't Derek's, he came back, begging for forgiveness, swearing he had changed, promising to rebuild our family. But when I looked at him, all I could see were the mistakes. How can you rebuild a home when the very foundation has rotted away? Every word, every touch from him only reopened the wound. The love we once had, once so beautiful, had now curdled into bitterness. A quiet kind of resentment that I couldn't voice, but also couldn't swallow. I felt like a stranger in my own life, trapped between a past I couldn't return to and a future I couldn't see. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know where to go, what to do, or even who I was anymore. My body was exhausted, and my soul felt like a wasteland after the storm. I didn't realize it then, but I was nearing a breaking point. Looking back now, I understand. When everything inside you has run dry, there comes a moment when the universe, or maybe it's God himself, starts to stir. And when that happens, you can never predict what's coming next. It all began so normally. I was simply searching for a bit of peace amid the wreckage and relentless pressure that had become my life. Some friends invited me to play poker, and I agreed. Not because I loved the game, but because I needed an excuse to escape. To just be Madeline. Not the betrayed wife, not the worried mother, just me. The laughter was genuine, the moments brief but precious. It felt like taking a breath of fresh air after being underwater for far too long. But as always, just when I started to feel the tiniest bit okay, reality came crashing back like a wave. Derek showed up. He always had a way of ruining the few peaceful moments I managed to find. He was drunk, reeking of alcohol, eyes bloodshot, slurring his words. He insisted I go home with him. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotion. Anger that he had invaded my space, fear of what might happen if I refused, and exhaustion from constantly having to hold myself together. For reasons I still can't fully explain, I agreed. Maybe I was too tired to resist. Maybe a tiny part of me still clung to the hope that things could be better. Or maybe I just wanted the conversation to end so I could get back to Nathan. In his drunken state, Derek demanded that I drive his new car, a car I'd never driven before. The thought of taking control of something unfamiliar made me uneasy, but once again I gave in. Sometimes agreeing feels easier than fighting. We got in the car, and the silence between us was suffocating, filled with unspoken words and wounds that never healed. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, eyes fixed on the road ahead, fully aware of his gaze on me. Then he broke the silence. He started talking about our marriage, the past, and how he wanted everything to go back to the way it was. His words were a chaotic mix of regret and blame, apologizing one minute, accusing me the next for not being able to move on. Without warning, Derek reached for my hand, not with affection, but with a dangerous kind of resolve. He grabbed my finger, trying to pull off my wedding ring, the one he had given me years ago, once a symbol of love, now just a relic of a broken dream. I yanked my hand away instinctively, not because I still loved him, but because that ring held the last shred of the woman I used to be, the one who believed in love and loyalty. That was the moment everything shattered. Derek's expression changed, his face twisted with anger, disappointment, and something darker. Before I could process what was happening, he lunged at me. In a matter of seconds, my life was about to change forever. One moment I was driving, trying to keep things together. The next, he was on top of me, pinning me against the driver's seat. His hands held me down with a strength I didn't know he possessed. The stench of alcohol filled my lungs, and the eyes that once looked at me with love were now filled with a fury that chilled me to the bone. I tried to scream, but his arm crushed my throat. I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned, desperate for air. My hands, once gripping the wheel, now clawed at his skin, trying to push him away. But it was no use. He was too strong, and the alcohol seemed to make him even stronger. My vision blurred, black dots danced before my eyes. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, a deafening countdown to the final seconds I had left. That feeling, when your own body betrays you, begging to live but no longer able to fight, is something I'll never forget. In that moment, a flood of thoughts raced through my mind. I thought of Nathan, my precious boy. If I didn't survive, who would take care of him? How would he cope with losing me in a life already filled with too many challenges? I thought of my parents, my friends, of all the things I hadn't done yet, all the dreams left unrealized. And then, just as I felt myself slipping away, just when my body was ready to give up, a strange thing happened. It was as if a veil had been lifted. The pain, the fear, everything vanished. I felt weightless, like I no longer belonged to my body. I began to drift. At first I thought I had simply passed out, but then I realized I could see everything, and with a clarity I had never experienced before. I saw Derek still pinning my body against the driver's seat. I saw my own face, pale, motionless, void of life. But I wasn't there anymore. I was outside of myself, hovering above, watching everything unfold like a scene from a movie I could no longer control. I saw the moment Derek realized what he had done. I saw the panic flood his eyes as he let go of my neck, shaking me, calling out my name. But I couldn't answer, My body was still there, but I was somewhere else. That's when I understood. This wasn't unconsciousness. I had died. Strangely, I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt a peace so profound, so deep, I almost didn't recognize it. And just when I thought I had seen the most extraordinary thing, something even more miraculous began to happen. A radiant light appeared, more beautiful than anything I had ever seen. It wasn't just bright, it was warm, welcoming, and overflowing with a love I never knew existed. I knew, with an unshakable certainty I can't explain, that my journey was only just beginning. Wrapped in that indescribable light, I felt myself being lifted away from the car, away from Derek, away from the lifeless shell of my body. I wasn't yanked or dragged. I was guided, gently, lovingly, with such care. I was floating, yet completely held. There was no fear, no pain, only a deep, holy stillness and a sense of being welcomed home. As I drifted further from the scene of the attack, I became aware that my perception was expanding. No longer bound by physical senses, I could feel, hear, and understand everything at once. Colors were more vivid, sounds more pure, and even energy itself had a presence I could sense. Suddenly, I found myself in a place that words cannot truly describe. It felt like I was everywhere and nowhere, all at once. Time didn't exist the way we understand it. Past, present, and future melted into a single, unified reality. In that state, I began to understand things I had never been able to grasp before. It was as if all the knowledge of the universe was accessible to me. I understood the purpose of life, the meaning of love, the sacred connection between all living things. I saw that every decision, every action, no matter how small, sends ripples through the great tapestry of existence. And there I was, Madeline Reeves, standing at the threshold of another world, a world where truth is no longer hidden and unconditional love is the very breath of existence. I saw my entire life unfold before me, not as a linear timeline, but as a vast mosaic where every moment, every relationship, every trial was woven together with divine precision. I saw all the experiences that shaped me, the opportunities I missed, the lessons I learned. But there was no shame, no regret, only deep understanding and acceptance. And then, right in the center of that experience, I felt a presence, not just an energy or a light, but a person. Radiant, majestic, overflowing with a love so powerful it wrapped around my soul like a warm embrace. He walked toward me, and though he didn't speak aloud, I knew instantly it was Jesus. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw eternity. He didn't need to introduce himself. My soul recognized him. Jesus began to walk with me through the memories of my life. We didn't speak with words, but through thoughts, emotions, and pure understanding. I asked questions about the meaning of life, the reason for suffering, what happens after death. He didn't answer with explanations, but with revelations. Truth didn't come as information, it came as remembrance, as if I had always known, but was only now able to grasp it. I understood that life on earth is a sacred classroom. Every challenge, every pain is an opportunity to grow. That love is the most powerful force in the universe, stronger even than death, and that we are all connected. Each action, no matter how small, ripples across the fabric of eternity. Then I thought of Derek and what he had done, but instead of anger or bitterness, I felt compassion. I saw his wounds, his fear, the pain and confusion that drove his actions. It didn't excuse what he did, but I could now see beyond it, to the broken soul behind the broken behavior. And then I thought of Nathan, my son, my heart. A flood of unconditional love surged through me. I saw that his life, though filled with hardship, carried a divine purpose. He was destined to impact many, to teach others through his resilience, his strength, and his quiet courage. Jesus turned to me again. His gaze was both tender and commanding, and suddenly a vision opened before me, vivid and alive. I saw Nathan, no longer in a wheelchair but standing, walking, strong, confident. He looked older, in his 20s maybe, and beside him stood a young woman. They held hands, their eyes full of deep mutual love. She was his wife. My heart swelled with joy. The scene shifted. I saw them in a warm, welcoming home. Nathan was playing with two small children, my grandchildren, laughing, lifting them into the air. The sound of their laughter was pure light. Then I saw him at work, focused and driven, surrounded by books and papers. He had become a respected professional, someone making a difference in people's lives. The vision continued. I saw him speaking to large crowds, sharing his story and inspiring others. I saw him being honored, receiving awards for his contributions to the world. I saw him grow old, surrounded by family and friends, full of peace and purpose. In every scene, Nathan radiated strength, joy, and quiet determination. This was the future I had once dreamed of for him, but never dared believe was possible. As I watched these moments unfold, I understood the reason for this vision. It was a calling, a divine reminder. Nathan needed me, not just now while he was still young, but throughout his journey into that bright future. I had a role to play in his transformation, from a boy in a wheelchair to the man I had just seen. And in that moment, I felt it with absolute certainty. I had to go back. No matter how painful, no matter how hard, it was time to return. Nathan would need me to believe in him, to fight for him, to never let him give up. The vision slowly faded, but the feeling it left in me remained, a fire of purpose, of hope, of unconditional love. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be trials, doubts, and dark nights. But now I had clarity. I had seen the reason to keep going. As the final image of Nathan disappeared, I felt ready. Ready to return, ready to be the mother he needed, ready to help him live the future that God had just shown me. But before I could return, before reuniting with my body, I had one final journey to take, a journey to a place I never imagined existed, a place that forever altered my understanding of life, death, and what comes after. Just when I thought my experience couldn't become any more intense, I felt a sudden shift. The radiant light that had embraced me began to fade, replaced by a thick, suffocating darkness. It was as if I was being pulled down into a realm that challenged everything I thought I knew about existence. And then I was there, in a place that could only be described as hell. This was not the hell of movies or storybooks, no red devils, no pitchforks. What I encountered was far more vivid, far more terrifying. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and hopelessness. It wavered between freezing cold and unbearable heat, distorting time and sense. Every movement of my consciousness felt like stepping into living agony. All around me were souls, no longer physical bodies but ghostly forms, writhing, twisting in torment. Some seemed to be burning, yet not consumed, trapped in a fire that didn't kill, only tortured. Others floated in total darkness, cut off from sound, touch, or even awareness of others. Complete isolation. I saw souls reliving the worst moments of their lives, over and over, trapped in a loop of guilt and regret with no way out. The soundscape was horrifying, a cacophony of shrieking, weeping, cries for mercy. But it wasn't just noise. It was the echo of broken hearts that had never healed. As I tried to grasp what I was seeing, something deeply disturbing struck me. Some of the souls here had clearly been cremated after death. I turned toward the faint presence of light still lingering near me. Jesus, who had walked with me through heaven, now dimmed by the weight of this place. Are they here because they were cremated? I asked, shaken and confused. The answer came not in words, but as a wave of undeniable truth. No. Cremation is not a sin. They are here not because of what happened to their bodies, but because of what they chose in life. That truth hit me like a stone in still water. I realized then this was not punishment from a cruel God. This was the natural consequence of a soul's choices. A reflection of the heart, not a verdict from heaven. Each person in their own way had created this hell through what they did, what they thought, what they refused to change. Some were here because of cruelty, others because of greed, pride, or cold indifference to others' pain. But what broke me most were the souls trapped here because they couldn't forgive themselves. They had built their own prison with shame and guilt, locking themselves away in torment of their own making. My heart ached with compassion. I saw that many of them didn't even know they could leave. They were so entangled in self-condemnation they couldn't even recognize that a way out existed. And then I thought of Derek. His violent act had brought me to the edge of death. There was a time I thought I would hate him forever. But now, standing in the presence of ultimate truth, I felt something entirely different. A deep, sorrowful grief. If Derek never changed, if he refused to repent, if he continued on the path of pain and blindness, I knew this could be his fate, and I wouldn't wish this place on anyone, not even him. That experience taught me a lesson more powerful than anything I've ever known. Every word we speak, every choice we make, every thought we nurture, it all has consequences. They either lift us up or drag us down, not by God's hand but by the weight of our own souls. When I was finally pulled from that dreadful realm, it felt like being lifted out of the deepest pit imaginable. But I didn't come out of it afraid. I came out with a renewed fire, a purpose I had never known before. I knew now that I wasn't returning just for Nathan, not only to help my son fulfill the beautiful destiny I had seen, but to live in a way that would awaken others, to become a living reminder that light always exists, even in the darkest places, and that no matter what we've done, we can choose again, to love, to forgive, to repent, and to step out of the hells we've built for ourselves. With new clarity and purpose, I knew it was time to return to life, to my body, and to all the challenges ahead. After enduring the depths of hell, I felt a soft but insistent pull, like a thread guiding me home. The return was violent. My spirit, once limitless, was forced back into the cramped confines of flesh and pain. I gasped for air as my body screamed awake, each heartbeat a thunderclap, each breath a struggle. The spiritual truths I had grasped faded quickly, slipping away like mist. I was alive again, but it felt like being trapped in a cage. When I opened my eyes, everything looked dimmer. The world I'd returned to was distorted, like a faded echo of where I had been. Derek was there, hovering over me, panic etched on his face. He held me, called my name, but his touch repulsed me. He was no longer the man I once loved. He had become the reason I crossed into death. My voice was barely a whisper, but I managed, "Let me go." He didn't. Whether from denial or guilt, he kept touching me, trying to make it right. But it felt like another violation. Summoning strength I didn't know I had, I pushed him away. Pain surged through my body, but I didn't care. I stumbled out of the car, barefoot on cold ground, breathing in night air like it was my first breath. Everything felt surreal. Distant barks, wet grass, flickering lights, all so familiar and yet foreign. Derek followed me, pleading, apologizing. "Please, Madeline, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." I turned to face him. He looked small now, broken, pitiful. For a moment I felt pity. I remembered the souls in hell, stuck there not by force, but by self-condemnation. But then came the memory of his hands around my neck, the terror, the moment I slipped away. "Don't come near me," I said, voice steady. "It's over." He begged again, promising change, but something inside me had shifted, no longer out of fear, but power. "You didn't almost kill me, Derek. You did. I died in that car." He couldn't understand. How could he grasp what I'd seen? The divine light, the depths of darkness, the voice that called me back. "You don't get it," I continued. "I've seen what comes after this. I've learned what love is. And this," I gestured between us, "was never it." I spoke the truth I had hidden for years, about the betrayal, the loneliness, the weight of holding a marriage together that had long since fallen apart. Then I spoke about Nathan, our son, my reason to live. I told Derek about the vision, Nathan walking again, living fully, loved and free. "He's going to do incredible things, Derek, and I need to be here to see it, to help him get there." Something awakened inside me, not rage but conviction. I wasn't the broken woman anymore. I had crossed the veil, seen eternity, and returned with a mission. "It's over," I said once more, calm and certain. "Don't contact us again. If you want to change, do it far away from me and Nathan." And then I walked away from the man who had once meant everything to me. I heard the faint clink of a wedding ring hitting the pavement behind me, but I didn't turn around. That chapter was over. My body ached with each step, but my mind was clear and my heart light. I had died that night, but I had also been. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind of pain and emotion. Physically, I was slow to heal. My throat remained sore, the bruises lingered, but the deeper wounds were invisible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the attack, felt the suffocation and fear all over again. I sought therapy because I knew I couldn't survive it alone. It was hard, revisiting that night, speaking the unspeakable, but it helped. And it wasn't just the trauma of the attack I was unpacking. It was the spiritual journey I had experienced beyond the brink of death. That part was hardest to share. How do you explain leaving your body, seeing eternal light, and then descending into a place of darkness? I feared people would think I imagined it. But my therapist listened with compassion. She helped me see that this experience didn't have to be hidden. It could become part of who I was becoming. I also had to navigate my feelings toward Elias, conflicting emotions of betrayal and sorrow, tempered by the strange compassion I had felt during my near-death experience. Forgiveness became a quiet, difficult road. Through it all, Nathan was my anchor. He was scared and confused, unsure why we were suddenly living at my aunt's or why his father wasn't there. I explained what I could in ways he'd understand. Watching him adapt reminded me of the vision I'd had of his future, a healthy, happy young man filled with light. That vision became my motivation when everything felt too heavy to bear. We started fresh. A modest apartment, a new routine, morning coffee, walks to school, shared meals. I returned to work, facing awkward questions and sympathetic stares, but I pressed on. Having been so close to death, I found a new appreciation for life's smallest blessings. Nathan's laughter, sunlight through the window, the smell of breakfast cooking. These things became sacred. Meditation helped me stay grounded. I wasn't searching for escape. I was reaching for the divine peace I had once touched. Some days it felt out of reach, but with time I began to sense that quiet presence again. I didn't return to traditional religion, but I didn't just heal, I transformed. I became stronger, more resilient, more compassionate. I no longer feared death because I had seen what lay beyond it. Life was a gift I'd been given again, and I vowed not to waste it. There would still be challenges, but I was no longer afraid. I had walked through the fire and come back. Eventually, I began sharing my story in small support circles, then in larger gatherings, not for attention, but because I knew someone out there might be waiting for a sign that healing was possible. I wasn't a spiritual teacher. I was simply someone who had been broken, who had returned, and who now walked forward with open hands and an open heart. Nathan remained my guiding star. I encouraged him to believe in his strength even when his body resisted. When doctors suggested a new therapy to improve his mobility, he said yes without hesitation. It was a long, painful journey, but we held on. And the day Nathan took his first steps without help, I wept. Not because it was magic, but because it was earned. Faith, perseverance, and love had brought us there. I never went back to Elias, but I did forgive him. Not for his sake, but for mine. Years later, when Nathan wanted to reconnect with his father, I let him. He needed to walk his own path to forgiveness, just as I had. Their reunion brought closure and healing, not just to them, but to me. Now I live simply, intentionally. I wake each day with gratitude. I see every soul I meet as a chance to reflect love. I don't pretend life is without darkness, but I've learned how to carry light into it, and that, to me, is the truest miracle of all. The story may have ended, but what Madeline experienced still whispers to us that this world is not all there is. Heaven is real, hell is real, and every choice we make, no matter how small, carries eternal weight for our souls. If you're hearing this right now, maybe it's not by accident. Maybe God is knocking on your heart. Don't ignore it. Type Amen in the comments, or let us know where you're watching from. It's not about formality, it's about saying, I've heard this and I won't turn away. If Madeline's story touched you, share it. Someone you love might be desperate for hope. Someone may be standing on the edge, and you could be the one God is using to bring them back to the light. And if you, or someone you know, has had a supernatural experience, seen the light, met the Lord, or crossed the line between life and death, we want to hear from you. We're here to listen, to pray, and to walk this journey with you. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. These testimonies are real, and they carry the power to plant seeds that can save lives.